Oh my god, YouTube, guess what I just did? You know, yep, you see that? Got the growlanser Generations PlayStation 2 games and the growlanser Heritage of War PS2 game and everything, and I think I may get a PSP emulator to play, what I can get that way, because I hear that good things about the PSP, version of it and everything, or maybe my hands on a fucking PSP, to play. I don't know, but I just decided that I wanted to get my hands on the physical copies of this, and I probably would want to get my hands on the physical copies of the PSP, version of it. But I'd have to actually have a PlayStation Portable to play them and everything. But I hear really good things about the growlanser series and everything, and so I'm finally gonna get my hands on it and try it out and see what it was like for myself and everything. And um, I'm hyped, about this. It's an old game and everything, but it's in the backlog now, and now it's going to be cleared out. Um, See, this is what I'm talking about. Like, look at it, look at it. It's the PlayStation 2 era. It's not a fucking shooter. It doesn't appeal to the kind of gamer that wants to play shooters at all. It doesn't appeal to the kind of people who want live service games at all and everything. And yet here's what the game that I'm buying. It's an old game. It's a retro game and everything. It's in a style that probably seems a bit dated and everything in the modern ecosystem and everything. And I don't care about any of that. I mean, did you know? Okay, personal history 101 about myself as a person and my history when it comes to x86 computing. When I first got my computer back in, roughly 2000 era, you know I did have access. I didn't My family never had to choose between video game consoles. We even had an N64 despite my dislike of it. Big sister was more into it, to say the least, than I ever would be. I still remember the Conker's Bad Fur Day jokes. So, that was more her and everything. And, to say the least of all of the things that I feel about this, and the sentiment that I feel in regards to all this, so basically I grew up and I got my computer, right, and at first when I got it, one of the things that I realized is that I couldn't play EverQuest and everything, and I couldn't sign up to one of like those more modern graphical games that were emerging at the time, right? Because when we got it, we didn't build it so that it would have a video card at first, primarily because video cards were expensive, and my family didn't realize that there may be, a need for me to have one, and so the board that I had originally didn't even have a slot for it, and everything. We just didn't have one at the time. The whole for GPUs was, already taking over and everything, but between GPUs and CPUs was already there, present in 2000 and everything. But I got my hands on it right around the turn of the century, basically, and it was a little bit better than a 386. Basically, it was a step up from the 486. Basically, it's a little bit more powerful, that era stuff. It was a gateway machine, and it didn't have a video card and everything, and it was big and it was clunky, and yeah. So the the whole experience, though, at the time, since I didn't have a video card, I wasn't able to play these graphical games, and so I got on America Online. I did a lot of chatting. I got involved in role playing communities that did text based role playing with each other. Found out about internet relay chat. Did some of it on there too. Connected with them and everything. And before long, some of the role players that I became was playing with found out about these this one game, basically, that was it was a terminal game, and it was called Ethereal 2, and it was basically a multi-user dungeon. And these are games that the only way that you can play, you enter with text. It's pure text. In a terminal at that point, it's pure command line environment sort of stuff, and you have to play within that environment, and that is the world that I was trapped inside and everything when I was of that age, when I was about 14, because I didn't have a video card. I wasn't able to get access to this whole wave of new content. At some point, I in one of the games I became involved in doing merchanting and everything to do some work for one of the guys because I wasn't able to afford to build a computer of my own, and I really wanted one to try out Final Fantasy 11 and everything. And I built an entire computer just to play Final Fantasy 11 on the computer, and everything back during that period because I was so psyched to see them offering, an RPG that was actually online. And at that point, I was really excited about it because, I'd been a Final Fantasy fan for so long at that point that it was just such a, it was a huge, huge thing for me to see them actually go onto the internet and everything. And I wanted to play with, and see the other members of the community and connect with them and everything, and all these people who had like-minded hobbies and interest and everything. And that was, a really exciting thing for me to do and everything. And I had to get a video card at that point. But in the previous era, before I joined Final Fantasy XI, I got a lot of experience playing multi-user dungeons and even pay-to-play ones for a while, like Gemstone IV and with Simutronics and Dragon Realms and everything. And I got to say that there was a lot that was lost in translation between the two. You would when it came to playing some of the more modern MMORPGs, it kind of felt like some of the older style of games had a lot more to them that ended up having to get stripped out in the transition to a full scale game because the expenses that are involved in producing a game at this level, you have to design graphics and then you have to have graphics designers involved in it, and then you've got to have a whole team of people that are involved in it. Whereas a developer who just can spit out some C code and on their own imagination can contribute massive amounts and everything with a small team of people to a multi-user dungeon. They can get a lot accomplished and everything, and when they're not hamstrung by the need to design advanced graphics in order to get the experience to the people and everything. And so when I look at Sony and everything and this whole this series looks dated, it doesn't look modern, it's 2D, it's not for our systems. It just sounds like whining to me. It doesn't sound like an actual legitimate objection. It's like you say that like it's a problem. And that's the authentic reaction that I have to those sorts of objections from the executives, as a gamer. So this is the growlanser series, which I'm hearing and I'm hearing about it because of a few people here up on YouTube who like to talk about, video games and everything. And, that credit to Eric Landon RPG and Milla's Game Room, in particular, as places, and, International Brandon and a bunch of these other channels and everything that eventually, because I was a fan of, let me look into this. Let me try to find the team of guys that I have been, Player Essence would be one of them, and I'm trying to the Night Sky Prince, right? Because especially because of the fact that I'm a Final Fantasy 15 hater, despite being a big fan of Final Fantasy. He kind of introduced me to the whole community of people that was unable to let go of what Final Fantasy 15 could have been, as opposed to what it was and everything. The very disillusioned crowd that would never let go of Stella and everything else about what that game should have been versus what it was and everything, and the missing potential and everything. So I ended up a fan of this guy, but this introduced me to a lot of the RPG community here, and everything that has been swirling on the platform, and the people that are part of this community on YouTube that have the same interest and hobbies that I do, that they're interested in the same genre of games and everything that I am, and through connecting with that. And I found for me that this has turned into what this has turned into is a situation at hand where I'm much more able to find out about the backlog of content that I missed ultimately, that I didn't, get to experience or see or even notice and everything. We were big, big, big working designs fans, right? We have copies of the Lunar 2 remake for the Sega CD, for not the Sega CD, but for the PlayStation and the Sega CD. We have the Sega CD version of it too, in its original case and everything, with the instruction manual at that level of things. We're we were big fans of Working Designs and very disheartened to find out that they went under and everything, and then that this is the game series that killed them, and then on top of that, that Sony's fuckery wouldn't let them, release this as separate projects and everything, and to split the whole, series up into smaller chunks because they needed far more revenue and money from us in order to to sustain themselves as a studio. They ended up, very much so kind of on their own and abandoned despite being beloved. And one of the things that went wrong with growlanser originally was simply that it was poorly advertised, and people like me who would have been interested didn't know that it existed, you know, and everything. And I have to confess to Atlas here about this. I'm so sorry, man. I mean, if I had been aware of growlancer, I would have adopted it back during the PlayStation 2 era. I would have tried it out. I would have been aggressively interested in it, given that Working Designs was bringing it over. Now I know that Working Designs wasn't perfect. Some of the games that they brought over, like Popful Mail, ended up being they weren't the RPGs that I would have expected them to bring over. But they whatever. Not mad about it or anything. It just was a flop for me. But somebody else might love it. I mean, why would they be making it if somebody else wouldn't love it? So, anyways. So basically, I just wanted to tell you, I decided to opt into this experience and everything, and I'm gonna find out, and I'm fucking psyched about it. You know, and I only found out about it because people have been so outspoken about it on YouTube.